Everyone, my name is Georgina Anderson. I'm the incoming director of the Region 2 Science and Engineering Fair. I have some very big shoes to fill as Oscar moves into his well-earned and well-deserved retirement. We especially thank him for his years and years of dedication to the Region 2 Science and Engineering Fair, and I personally thank him for all of the assistance he's provided me in helping me transition into this role. Um, this short video will give some background information about how judging procedures will take place on March 8th. A lot of things will be very similar to previous years if you've been a judge before, but a few things will be a little bit different. So please listen through, and if you have any questions, there'll be some information at the end about how to let me know what those questions are. What we're going to be talking about just in this next few minutes is some logistics about the science fair, especially if you're new to campus. We'll look at the schedule for the day, what awards are being given, which will hopefully give you a bird's eye view of how the evaluation procedures flow into those awards, the materials that as a judge you'll have to work with on Friday, and just very briefly some project evaluation best practices that you might want to think about before you start looking at students' projects. Before we get into that though, first of all, thank you. Thank you for taking the time out of your many of your spring breaks to be a judge. It means so much to our students that you are willing to interact with them and talk to them and be a role model for them as they develop their own identities as scientists and engineers. Our students have worked very, very hard, and they're very proud of their projects. And this science and engineering fair simply would not be able to happen without the volunteer judges. So we thank you for your time and your expertise and your energy. This year we have 288 science projects, 43 engineering projects, a few more juniors, and juniors are 4th through 8th graders. Then seniors have entered projects, total of 390 students. It's actually gone up just a little bit since I put this slide together a couple days ago, with 45 schools represented and then several homeschool programs as well. And thankfully, as our student scientist and engineer numbers have crawled up just a little bit, we actually have a few more judges than are listed on this slide as well. If you're new to campus, or if the area around the Coliseum is not an area that you're familiar with, there is going to be free parking available in the AD16 lot. This is the lot that is sometimes called the Gadsden Devine lot. If you are looking for the correct entrance to get into that lot, you'll want to type in 849 Devine Street into Google Maps or whatever other GPS that you use. That parking lot is approximately 1 block away from the Carolina Coliseum. Carolina Coliseum is located at 701 Assembly Street here in Columbia, and you can see the parking lot and the Coliseum are highlighted with an orange square around them in the map. For the Carolina Coliseum, all the doors will be closed except for the ones near the check-in tables. And the check-in tables are closest to Colonial Life, and the vista is up here if you are a little less familiar with campus. So you're going to want to make sure you come to that corner of the building to be most efficient. There's an elevator here, the circle with the orange outline. So otherwise there's a staircase, but there's an elevator there that you can use. Directly across from the Carolina Coliseum is the Darla Moore School of Business. If you see DMSB throughout this presentation, that's the School of Business. This is a walkway, it's not crossing a road, and the judge's headquarters will be located in that room 123 of Darla Moore. If you're coming from another direction, I just want to point out there is a tunnel that goes under Assembly Street. There's some construction going on. Assembly Street is a pretty busy road. You may want to consider using that tunnel if you're coming from the other side of campus. Here's our schedule for the day. You have received information already about what rounds you will be judging in. If you have any questions, concerns, if an emergency comes up, please send me an email, ga2@email.sc.edu, as soon as possible. We do have some flexibility to adjust things if it's absolutely necessary. Things happen, things come up. We all totally understand. So please let me know if there's any issues that arise. These are the judge check-in times. So if you are signed up to be a round 1 junior judge, we'd like to see you about 8:50 in the morning, checking in at the table to get your judging materials, your clipboard, your name tag, pencil or pen, and your project evaluation forms. After that, there's a 30-minute judges meeting, going over some important information and if there are any changes that you need to be aware of. And that will be followed by project evaluations, and that is back across the walkway there in the Carolina Coliseum from 9:30 to 12. That may seem like a long time, it will go by very fast. Junior finalists, check-in is at 12:20, seniors round 1, check-in is at 12:50, and senior finalists is at 3:50 for check-in. This is the schedule we're going to try very, very, very hard to adhere to. We're going to try to keep things moving, keep things as efficient as possible. There may be things that come up that put us a little behind schedule. We won't run ahead of this schedule though. I'm told this is a bit of an ambitious schedule. One of my hopes in carrying on the legacy of the Science and Engineering Fair is to make sure that your time as judges is used as efficiently as possible. So we are going to try to wrap up a little earlier in the evening than has been done in previous years. If we get behind schedule, that's something we will possibly have to adjust for. So this is the planned schedule. If you are signed up to judge multiple rounds, perhaps round 1 juniors and then junior finalists, there's no need to attend a second judges meeting. There won't be any new or additional information there. You could if you want to, but there's no requirement to. The project categories are adjusted very slightly this year than they have been in previous years. What we've done is try to even out the number of participants in the categories just a little bit. Biology has historically been a category where there are lots of participants. So we split that into 3 subcategories, and that will allow the judges to just interact more efficiently and in maybe a little bit more organized manner with those students throughout the day. One thing that we noticed as registrations came in, we had an overwhelming number of chemistry entries in our 4th to 8th grade junior division. So in order to allow the maximum number of students to advance to the finals and to be considered in that second round and get that much more feedback about their projects, we split the junior chemistry division into 3 subcategories: physical processes, and that mostly relates to things melting, things becoming soluble, temperature changes. Then there were quite a few food-related projects, things like cereal getting soggy, for instance, or gummy bears expanding in different fluids. And then finally, we put the remainder of the chemistry projects in a general chemistry category. That wasn't necessary to do with the seniors, so the seniors only have subcategories for biology. You'll notice possibly that under the engineering project categories, the seniors have a biomedical category, the juniors do not. The juniors had that category available to them. They just didn't have any entries in that category. So functionally, it's no longer there in the project evaluation forms or judge matching. Again, this is intended to give kind of a broad view of what the judges completing the project evaluations are working towards. So on Sunday, March 24th, we're going to be having the big formal award ceremony for the juniors, and then later in the afternoon for the seniors. And these are the awards that will be given. So for the science categories and subcategories, we'll be recognizing and honoring the top 5 individuals and the top 5 teams. Subcategories of engineering. And then with feedback from teachers especially, we're going to continue to have grade level awards in the junior division. There are such large developmental differences academically, in terms of critical thinking, in terms of scientific reasoning between 4th and 5th graders and 7th and 8th graders, that it really makes sense to break those students out and recognize them where they're at and where developmentally they should be. So we are going to look at grade level winners in the junior categories. And then, because communicating scientific information is so critical, we can do the best science in the world, and if we can't communicate it, not super useful. So promoting excellence in science communication, we're going to have a special prize for 4th and 5th graders, honoring and recognizing the top 5 individuals and teams with high scores in the communications category. And then the same thing for the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. Then, the big prize, the big deal, is the grand award winners. So what we'll do at the very end here of the junior finalist round, we'll have a panel of head judges who will sort through the highest scoring science individuals, those projects, and look at the numerical rankings of those projects and ensure that, since these are being evaluated across categories, that the numerical ranking truly reflects the personal observations. And in that way, the grand award winners will be determined in part by numerical scoring and in part by the personal observations of the panel of head judges. We'll follow that pattern for the top 8 science teams, the top 8 engineering individuals, and the top 8 engineering teams. Very similarly, the senior division awards are set up much the same. The only difference here is we don't have the grade level awards. We're still doing recognition of the top 5 individuals and teams in each science category and subcategory, each of the engineering subcategories, and also that excellence in communication category. And likewise, the head panel will be involved in evaluating across categories to determine the top 8 science individuals, the top 8 science teams, the engineering individuals, and the engineering teams. So the grand award winners will be determined in part on their numerical scores, and then with consideration from the head judges of how cross-category comparisons between projects are best sorted out. When we're looking at projects that are in vastly different categories, we want to recognize that those are not necessarily apples to apples comparisons, and while the numbers get us a significant portion of the way to an equitable score, that we do need to have humans look at those as well. These are the breakdown of points for each portion of the rubric, and these rubrics come directly from the International Science and Engineering Fair information that's provided. You'll notice that between science projects and engineering projects, there are a lot of similarities. In fact, there's only one category that's different for science projects. If you're looking at those during the day on Friday, there's a category of data collection, analysis, and interpretation, and engineering projects instead have a construction and testing category, but they are worth an equal percentage of the overall total. So all of these add up to 100 points. This presentation that makes up the largest chunk of points, not a majority, but the longest single chunk of points, that score will be used to determine the excellence in communication awards that we talked about just a moment ago. So now we're going to move on to the actual procedures for what judges will be doing on Friday at the Science and Engineering Fair. So when you check in as a judge at the registration table, you'll be given a clipboard, and that clipboard will be preloaded with the evaluation papers for the projects that you have been assigned. And these assignments were made based on the areas of expertise that judges said they were comfortable evaluating, and also the number of projects in each category and subcategory that we had entered. We tried very, very hard to keep judges looking at projects in their own area of expertise or very close to their area of expertise. We did have to do just a little bit of reshuffling to make that work well. All projects, science, engineering, individual, and team, are currently set up so they'll be evaluated in each round by a minimum of 3 judges. We actually have it set up, hopefully, so 4 judges will look at each project. But as people's schedules in some cases have to change, we're really committed to a minimum of 3 evaluations per project. You see here that there are 13 different statements, and you can pause this and read it if you'd like to. I'm not going to read it to you necessarily. These 13 statements are going to be printed on the forms that you receive on those clipboards, and for each statement, you'll be circling or otherwise marking no evidence, below average, average, above average, or excellent for each one of those statements. So, for instance, the first question, a clear and focused research question is stated. And you'll look at the project that corresponds to that first paper and decide, is this average, above average, excellent, or is this an area that the student could improve on? I would recommend, if you don't see or hear something in the presentation or on the poster board, you might want to ask the student. It may be something that somehow got omitted from the poster board. Just consider double checking that it wasn't actually a part of their project. These are novice students, they're learning and growing. The score papers for engineering projects are very, very similar. There's the same number of questions. Many of the questions are worded slightly different to reflect that engineering projects are a little bit different in how they are approached than science projects. Something you might want to consider as a judge is holding on to your first couple of completed score papers, maybe until you have 3 projects evaluated, and then reviewing back to the first one, making sure that after looking at 2, 3, 4 projects, somewhere in that ballpark, that you've calibrated for yourself what an average looks like, what an above average looks like. These are ordinal choices. These are to be made in comparison with a standard that you personally hold, and therefore looking at your own calibration from one project to another might be really valuable. I do want to point out that once your score papers have left your hands and gone to our data entry, it will be extremely difficult to get those back. That's really going to be a challenge for the workflow that we have set up. So please try your hardest when you hand those papers off to be confident in the scores that you've provided. So we'll wrap up here with a few best practices in project evaluation. So the first thing I'd like to point out, especially if this is your first time judging, that these students who will be talking to you about their science and engineering projects, they are excited to be here. They are proud of their work. They worked hard, and they chose to do this when it wasn't required, in most cases, when their classmates didn't have to. This isn't for most a class requirement or even a grade in their class. This is something they've gone above and beyond to work on. There will be a range of scientific knowledge that you see, a range of writing and speaking skills that you see. Those are going to vary from student to student, grade level to grade level. Please, I would ask you to try to find the positive aspects of each project to focus on when you talk with the students. There are going to be some projects that stand out immediately as absolutely excellent, and some projects that stand out as this student still has a lot of growing to do in their journey to be a scientist or engineer, and both of those are okay. Our students are learning, these students are here and trying, and that is so important. Something that I've noticed in previous science fairs, When students have prepared very well to talk with you as judges, they have typically prepared the beginning of their talk a little more than the end of their talk. The beginning of their talk is typically background information and the rationale for their project. When they spend a lot of time talking about the background information, they sometimes run out of time to talk about the data collection, analysis, and interpretation that they themselves did. Encourage the students to talk a little less about the background information and a little more about their own work. Things are scheduled so judges have about 10 to 12, sometimes a little more, time with each student or team of students. And if a lot of that time gets used up talking about background information, it can be hard to get a sense of the work that students did on their own project. Keep in mind that we're looking at students with very different age and grade levels, and so we're going to see very different skill levels in the projects here. If you are a faculty person or an instructor at a university, or if you work in industry or government, I'm sure you know there's a vast difference between an undergraduate student, a first-year master's student, and a doctoral student who's preparing a dissertation, or an undergrad intern, a new hire in an entry-level position, and then somebody who's more senior working in a different company or government agency. We see the same things here. Our fourth graders are at a different place than our seventh graders, and they are at a different place than the 11th graders. We'll see differences in the vocabulary they use, in their thinking skills, and the way they communicate with you. There will also be differences expected in the independence students use to complete their projects. Science by nature is a collaborative thing. We expect students to work as independently as possible, but mentoring is a very, very good thing. Seeking help is a good thing. We wouldn't expect fourth graders to be working completely independently. Honestly, that might actually be a scary situation. I'm wrapping up a doctoral degree. I still don't work fully independently. Most of us just don't. That's not how science is. So if a student is telling you when and how they got help with their project, that's a really good thing. That's not something to criticize. Now, there is a point where too much help hinders a project and it's not truly the student's work anymore. And that's why the interview, this talking portion of the project evaluation is so important. You're welcome to explicitly ask students, what did you complete all on your own, and what was something that you got help with? That's a great way to gauge where students were able to work on their own and where mentoring or assistance was needed, or maybe given when it wasn't quite needed. Again, I recommend you hold on to your first couple project evaluation papers, just so you can go back after those first couple and make sure you have set for yourself what average is, what above average is, what excellence looks like. Mentioned this earlier as well. If you don't see direct evidence or don't hear direct evidence, consider asking the student before marking no evidence on the scorecard. That will be a fairly hurtful ding in their score if they have a no evidence score. And finally, as a judge, you are welcome to walk around with another judge, maybe two other judges. More than that might actually be a little intimidating to students, but feel free to make the judging process what you feel works best for you. I do ask that you complete your scoring paper independent of other judges. Even if you're walking around and talking about projects together, your paper and another judge's paper hopefully will not be absolutely identical. They may be in some cases, but hopefully not. If you prefer to talk to students one-on-one without circulating with another judge, that is also fine. Totally up to you. So, finally, these judging procedures are a little bit different than have been done in previous years. And if you have been a judge in the past, some things may look different. I sincerely appreciate your flexibility, a spirit of curiosity, as we try a little bit of a different procedure this year. In the email with the link to this video, I'm going to be including a link to a Google form. If you have any questions after watching this video, anything that is just super confusing, or any questions that you have, feel free to type them into that Google form, and if I see questions that are coming up over and over, I'll make sure to address those specifically in the 4 Judges meetings on Friday. You can also bring any questions to the judges meeting on Friday, and we can talk about them at that time. Again, thank you so much. Thank you for volunteering a portion of your spring break, if you are on spring break, or of your work day. Thank you for being a role model to these students who are building their identities as scientists and engineers. Thank you for bringing your expertise and your energy to interacting with students. I'm really looking forward to meeting you tomorrow. Thank you again, and we'll see you at the Science and Engineering Fair.